Welcome to this video for round 12 of the candidates tournament in Khantymandzysk, Russia, and this is about the game Mamedyarov playing white against Karjakin playing black, which means both players are on 50%, and in order to get some sort of chance to catch the tournament leader, former world champion Vishy Anand, they need to have a winner in the game, which pretty much shows which pretty much indicates that we get a sharp game. Let's see what happens. Yeah, we got the Nimzo, and Mamedyarov plays f3, the line that he already had used successfully to beat Levon Aronian in a crucial game just a couple of days ago. Karjakin, however, plays another line. Castles was Aronian's choice. He played the move c5, which made me curious because, as probably lots of you know, I'm writing a book. It takes a long while because I have some other obligations, like doing all those videos. And the book is about a black repertoire in the Nimzo Indian and the Bogo Indian. And in the Nimzo Indian part, I'm recommending exactly the line that Karjakin is playing here. He's playing this this very aggressive continuation with b5, which immediately attacks white's center. The best continuation is here e4, played also by Mamedyarov. And now the big point of black's play is to castle, not to play like they did in former years, where black was capturing here and try to get an equal position in this way. Looks quite funny, but this is actually very good for black. White here needs to take with the bishop, but after ed, queen takes. Black is slightly under pressure, so not too great, but my recommended move is castles. I mean, I didn't invent it. There were examples of this, but I decided that this should be a good way to play. It's very sharp after e5. Black needs to drop back the knight to e8. Looks a bit crazy, but this knight will get back into the game. White has a very extended center and not much development. Yeah, f4. This is pretty much necessary to give some support to the center. I always thought that this is a very funny line where white moves out of 8 initial moves. He plays 7 pawn moves and just has the knight on c3, which is already pinned. Well, in the meantime, black has castled and put the knight on e8. Looks really strange, but this is of course a very hyper-modern approach, which basically means that black is conceding the center initially, but now will do everything in order to destroy it. Knight f3. I'm sorry, black first took here, played d6. Yeah, knight f3, and here he played c4. Yeah, here's the difference to my repertoire suggestion. The only thing I'm going to tell right now, you still need to get the book when it will be released. My choice here is knight c7, which is also exceptionally sharp. I mean, if you had followed recent games, you might have seen the really great game between the Brazilian Grandmaster Alexander Fehr and Mickey Adams from the Gibraltar Open, where they had the super sharp game in this line. Maybe you can look it up on chessgames.com or just Google the Gibraltar Open 2014 best games or something. This will pop up. Very sharp as well. Yeah, c4 was Karjakin's choice. It also makes lots of sense, this kind of push. It has various ideas. One idea is simply to protect the pawn on b5, of course. It's not attacked anymore by the bishop now. And very often you can get a bishop to c5 or queen to b6. That actually helps white, helps to disturb white's development and castling. It's still very sharp, of course. After a4, black has a hard time to protect this. And he gives the pawn up, actually. and tries to speed up his development. I won't do any big alternatives here. I can only mention that here the original game of this line was played with bishop g4. And this was actually played by Kramnik as black against Alexei Shirov in Shanghai 2010, and it led to enormous complications. So, and it seems to be okay for black, but Shirov got a good position with very, very strong play. In my analysis, I think I came to the conclusion that this is playable for black, but it is a very hairy business, so to say. Knight d7, I think, is also quite interesting. Bishop e2 and queen to b6. Yeah, white now takes, and black plays knight to c7. He needs to move the knight on e8, of course, to get some development going. Bishop b7 is coming next to get the d5 pawn, and yeah, it's very concrete already. White needs to do something to get castled, and you cannot stay here all the time with the king. After bishop b7, knight d5, you really will be attacked here. So Mamedyarov went for queen to d4, which is a good move, I believe. Bishop to b7 was played. Now bishop to d2. Yeah, making sure that this pin is broken. Yeah, now black took on c3, and white recaptured with the pawn, which is quite surprising, I believe. I mean, I really would have thought that bishop takes c3 is like the absolutely normal move, and it seems that this should be about equal. It's a complicated position, nevertheless. A possible line, just to give you an idea, it's not meant as a thorough analysis. A possible line could be d, e, f, e, and maybe knight d5, trying to get the bishop, which might be one of the reasons why Mamedyarov didn't play that. He probably didn't want to give up the bishop pair yet. It's probably around equal, this position. We do a quick count here. White has got 5 pawns, black's got 5 pawns. We've got equal material, but all those pawns here are quite weak and can easily fall in the upcoming complications. Let's say, just to illustrate, something like that can easily lead to further exchanges, where at the end we'll get a situation where simply is not much left on the board. This b takes c move that Mamedyarov played is maybe objectively weaker here, but it keeps more tension in the position, simply because any capture on d4 now can be answered by c takes d4. So right here, for example, this seems to be quite okay for white. Let's say here, white has got the additional idea, rook a4, to get this back. Just one possibility. The trade on d4 is really less attractive now, as white can take with the pawn, but Karjakin simply took the material in the center and took on d5. So the white center is basically collapsing. Is he worse? I don't know. This might be, but it's not an entirely clear affair. He now grabbed even the b5 pawn. Seems okay, and castles. Yeah, white's idea is simply, after knight e6, queen h4, this was played, is simply to transfer all the pieces for a kingside attack. Black has a very solid kingside in terms of pawn structure. There's no weakness there, like h6 or g6, which would invite sacrifices or direct attacks. But white potentially can bring many pieces there, like this is a typical idea. Getting the bishop on this attractive diagonal. There's always knight jumps, and yeah, in general the position is very much open. F file open, A file open. So white has enormous piece activity, and the situation is not entirely clear. The next move by Karjakin is really ambitious and frankly a bit risky. I thought that probably a5 is a good alternative. Just, I mean, a5, the a pawn is your winning pawn, if anything. So it's probably an idea to push it. What Karjakin did was even more ambitious. He played knight d to c5 in order to put this knight on b3 and then push the a pawn, so that the knight is actually supporting the final queening of the a pawn. It's like investing 2 moves to up the ante, so to say. If black delivers this touchdown on a1, it will really win, but it takes time, and it transfers a piece to b3, which is not exactly a spot where it defends the king. So I don't know. I really think a5 could be a good alternative, but it's very tricky or very complicated to to analyze this thoroughly. One possible setup is, by the way, to put the queen on c6 here, which makes lots of sense. It increases this pressure on the long diagonal, and is also ready to sometimes swing over to the king side to defend. This, in fact, looks like a pretty decent setup. Rook b1 is maybe also not the best move, but it's very hard, as mentioned, to do a thorough analysis. Another point, by the way, is that knight d4 might be answered by queen b2, attacking here. So this was probably a good way to play. Yeah, knight dc5 was played. And now after rook b1, knight b3, this was the plan. Mamedyarov went for bishop to d1 and initiates the mentioned transfer of the bishop to c2 to really get some attack going. And the position now will become extremely tactical. It starts right here. Karjakin played queen to a5, which looks a bit illogical, as I mentioned that the a pawn is your winner pawn. Why would you block it? That's true, but the thing is, you need to really very concretely calculate variations now, and this is attacking c3 and gets the queen involved into the game, really. It seems to be a good move. Black could do other things. He could have taken on f3, for example. This is one thing that I looked at, simply to get rid of this attacking knight. Rook takes and queen e5, just grabbing everything. This probably will lead to a draw. Rook h3, h6, and now bishop c2. Yeah, and here white is threatening the brutal bishop takes h6. And black probably must play knight g5 here to stop that. And this is not that. Queen takes. Oops. This is fairly
Check.
typical draw.
Check.
And black can try to avoid knight g5, but it is not easy to do. If you take here, for example, white will play bishop to e4 and continue to attack. Yeah, now knight g5 is obviously no draw anymore, and it gets really tricky now. f5, bishop d5, for example, sets up an enormous pin. I don't know, black probably shouldn't risk that. But bishop f3, it seemed playable. It seemed playable. Probably not the best move, but it was playable. What happens if black ignores all that and plays a5? Yeah, then you get bishop g2 in. And it's not so clear what black's counterplay exactly is. If you look at this, g6, well, h6 is completely out of the question. You can just smash on h6. So g6. And of course, yeah, the dark squares are immensely weak, which is really something that happens to you quite, yeah, not frequently. This is would be wrong, but if you play the Nimzo, you very often give up your dark squared bishop, of course, capturing on c3, and it is something to always be aware of, that you're lacking this bishop, and a defense with g6 is very often giving up your dark squares and leading to some problems. Here knight g5 is exceptionally strong. Black must take, of course. Bishop takes, yeah, and now we get a very similar attacking pattern like to the game, but black's queen is not really helping much in defending. It would be good simply to look at the game and compare this. So keep in mind this position with the queen being somewhat offside here in comparison to the game continuation. I think white has such a strong attack here, it will probably win. Queen a5, and now we get this. Yeah, see, it's very, very similar. Takes, takes, and now in this position, Karjakin took on c3. And this was the point of queen a5. And it's not like he wants to grab a pawn. Yes, it's nice to get another pawn. But the main point is that the queen is helping in defense. It can sometimes just take the important e5 pawn. It can also, in some cases, give a check here if the bishop is coming to f6. So this is a queen a5, queen takes e3 was mostly a defensive maneuver. Yeah, here Mamedyarov played rook f2, which seems fine. There's also this constant counterplay against g2 that can be an issue. For example, if you would have played bishop f6, that's the problem. You need to do something about the bishop. Basically, I think there were two moves here for white. The one he played, rook f2, or rook b to d1, was also an interesting move. The idea is simply the counter attack against the bishop, so that now queen takes c2 is answered by rook d5. And this is in fact a totally winning position, which might not occur to you at first sight, but the attack with bishop f6 or bishop h6 here is really decisive. Black has no serious counterplay, but it's no problem. After rook d1, black does not need to take here on c2, of course. You can play bishop c6, and after that probably rook f2 is the right move. And this actually transposes to almost transposes to the game. Let's check. Yeah, genau. Exactly now, knight c5 to e6. This is the defensive maneuver. Yeah, I have so many lines now in the upcoming moves that it's really confusing in my notes. Yeah, knight c5 to get to e6, cover the mate square on g7. And this obviously is very dangerous for black, but I couldn't really find something decisive here. Bishop f6 looks very natural. Well, knight e6. And how exactly do you mate black now? Queen h6. And now black needs to find a good move, but rook 88 is the best. It's simply ignoring the fact that white can take on d8. This would give up the all-important bishop. Yeah, it gets very deep, this analysis. White probably should take, and now drop the queen back into the game. It's an interesting position, but very hard to evaluate. Black has got 2 pawns for the exchange, and has got pretty solid positions for the pieces. I think black should be fine here. It's nothing to really be afraid of. He can also go here, possibly intending to drop the queen back to one of those good defensive squares. It's also very important to note that lots of endgames with an exchange down here could be drawn because of white's slightly compromised pawn structure. For example, an endgame with 2 rooks against rook and bishop with the bishop on e6 is probably a draw. We get to such a position later. So back to the initial game position. This was quite a long line. Rook f2, as mentioned, was played, and now knight d4. Yeah, it's getting to still a comparable position. Knight d4, and now bishop to h6. Yeah, obviously white's threat is queen to f6, and black has two ways now to deal with that. First of all, what about this move? Bishop h6, bishop f6. Sorry, this was of course possible. Black can play queen e3 or knight e6. Knight e6 can easily lead to positions that we had seen before. For example, rook d1, bishop c6, and we transpose that we had already seen before. Note that white cannot do it in a very direct fashion. Yeah, let's say rook here, for example. Black moves this rook away to get a square. You cannot do it like that, hoping for stuff like queen f2.
Check. Check. Checkmate.
Yeah, this would be neat, but in reality, black is not going to allow that. After rook takes, he can, for example, play the simple move queen d2. And now...
Check. Check.
Your dreams stop right here. White has an attack, but it's not decisive. It's just probably enough to compensate for the 2 pawns. He's got 2 pawns sacrificed already. He played bishop to h6. It's probably even the more dangerous move. Karjakin responded with knight c6. He also had knight e6. This I think was possible. Again, setting up this knight on e6 to cover g7. It's tough to say. It's so complicated. Queen f6 probably, and of course you only need to somehow get rid of this knight on e6 and your mating black. But how exactly are you going to do that? I really don't see a way. By the way, this can be considered, but now black's position is very much has improved in terms of kingside safety, and I really don't like that for white. You should try to continue with your attack with queen f6. Yeah, well, knight e6 wasn't played. He played knight c6, and this is a different defensive concept. He just wants to take e5, this important attacking unit. It's not just a pawn. It supports those jumps to f6. Yeah, well, knight c6. And what did white play now? He played rook to d1, attacking the bishop here. An alternative here was bishop to a4. This is one of the most solid ways to try it for white. What happens now? If black takes here, this is a very annoying move. Queen has no real square to go. This does not really help. Well, knight basically cannot take on e5. A line possible is queen e5. And now, for example, this. This could happen. And a position like that with bishop d7 coming to e6 is completely dead in terms of white's winning chances. Black has absolutely no worries here. It's quite funny that that some engines give white an advantage in this position, because well, this is the type of setup. Even after the queen trade, they say white should be slightly better. This is the kind of position where, well, as black you can even play against Carlsen and you won't lose, because it's a total fortress. King on g7 and you just stay, nothing happens. Okay, it didn't happen. Bishop a4. They both really try to play in the most principled, aggressive way possible, and not going for any direct draws. Mamedyarov played rook d1, attacking this bishop, and you need to know that Karjakin's clock time was going down rapidly. He was in huge time trouble already. This was this clock time here on shown on the on the screen is a bit too high, I think. And he was far lower in just a couple of moves. Okay, he took on e5, which was the idea all along. And now Mamedyarov plays quite a shocking attacking move, rook f5. It's quite hard to believe all this, but it happened. Note that again, white could consider to capture, but after that, it's not helping your attack. Black has 3 pawns for the exchange already, and this is simply too good an attacking unit. Rook f5 is an attractive move anyway. If you spot it, you should play it. The thing is that black now could have taken on f5, which would have led to a draw. Mamedyarov was forced to play rook f5 basically. He didn't have any other attacking device left. After that, white draws with rook takes d5, funny enough. And now after the queen check here, rook d1, queen e5, we will have a perpetual. There is no way to avoid it. This is quite funny. Black does not have any other checks, so let's say queen c3 for argument's sake. Then white just takes on f5, and this is a decisive attack with bishop takes h7 being the threat. Yeah, just to show the general idea. If black plays any sort of move, I don't know which one, this one maybe, just to show it. Takes, and this, and white wins, of course. Not only the queen, this will also be a checkmate against the king. Which means that after this this funny move, takes, rook d5, it will be a draw. But Karjakin wanted to win the game despite being down on time. I mean, he's got 3 extra pawns, so he's got some cause for trying. Okay, he played queen to e7. Of course, this is risky, yeah? No doubt about that. Queen to e7, yeah? So, bishop g5, obviously. What else? And now he played the move f6, which is probably the best choice. There only is queen c5, check as an alternative. Of course, you're attacked on d5 twice. You need to play something with a tempo. We cannot play a slow move here. King h1, for example, and then knight b4. This was the only alternative that you could consider, but it is very dangerous after bishop e4. I know it's a completely wild position, but this was the only halfway playable alternative, but it seems to be too dangerous for black. The move f6 that Karjakin played is also in a way very typical, as you this way get a little bit of room for the king, and in a way slow down the attack for just one move. Now Mamedyarov took on d5 with the rook. Yeah, was there something else? Yeah, he could have taken on f6 with the bishop. And this is a very tough position now. Black probably must check. He does not really have anything else. He needs to check to get this tempo. Yeah, and now this rook is hanging. White is going to retreat now. Yeah, and here you can examine various moves. Probably the best move is rook a to e8, which after a possible line of rook takes d5, knight b4, note there's a double attack, could lead to the following. Queen here, knight d5, queen d5, rook e6, and now queen to b3. It's probably a necessary move. It's all very complicated. I'm sorry if I'm doing this somewhat too quick, but if I'm going through everything here, I've got a 2-hour video on my hands. It's just a super tactical game.
Check.
What I'm getting at is that this is probably the result of all that, and I think this this actually should be a draw in the end. which is not agreed, which is not confirmed by the computer. But I don't really see how white should win this position. It looks really nice with the bishops, but you're in a sort of pin here on the f-file. And if you exchange one pair of rooks, you're never going to win. So I don't see how white should avoid that. You can try various things here, like this, for example, trying to check rook a3. Let's say bishop e4, again trying this, and then I'm moving the pawn here, let's say h5. Point being that bishop g6, rook a6 is not ending well for white. And black will probably just put the king here and intends rook a6 at the right moment to force a rook trade. And after that, white is not going to win ever. Very long line. And I'm not saying that it is necessarily all completely forced. But bishop f6, I think, would have given white quite substantial chances to win, especially considering that Karjakin had very little time on the clock. By the way, check. Queen e3 check, rook f2. There's also the move bishop to f7, trying to cover up the king side. Note that the queen is protecting the h6 square, and this can also lead to very tricky play. Bishop e4, for example, intending to take the knight, and the knight really has a problem. If it moves, let's say here, for example, white can just take the rook, and if black takes his rook to cover the knight, then white has the very strong idea coming up to play bishop to a1 and queen to f6. It's a very, very dangerous position for black. Bishop f6 was probably, in a practical sense, maybe it would have decided the game. It's hard to tell. Karjakin had really very little time. I think he had less than this 1 minute 44, and very doubtful if he could have defended that. Okay, he took here, takes on g5, and queen c4. Of course, this is also looking very attractive for white, getting the pawn back. And one pawn back, still 2 pawns down, and well, black's king is open, so it looks still very dangerous. Queen to e6 played, bishop b3. Yeah, this is an enormous diagonal. Black needs to get the king out of that, and now queen to c5. Here white also could have played queen c3, check. Which after queen f6
check
leads to something quite comparable to the main game at the end, with pretty good drawing chances, I believe, for white. Look at the game, it will look familiar. Queen c5 was played, and they both had little time, but Karjakin was down to seconds, really, to seconds. Probably even less than what is shown here. Queen c5, and now rook a to e8. Yeah, a very logical move, typical time travel move, also getting a big threat in yourself. You like to play those kind of forcing moves. Yeah, and here Mamedyarov played the most aggressive move possible. He played h4, which of course addresses this mate threat by giving the king a flight square on h2. And it puts the maximum pressure on black. Yeah, here, in fact, maybe this is pure theory because Karjakin had seconds on the clock. It seems that he could have actually taken on h4 instead of this check. If he takes, we can look at that. This looks very dangerous initially because of bishop a4 with a pin. But this is still quite okay for black. You can play rook f6. And now, it's remarkable and quite typical of some things that the computer will show you, which is completely irrelevant for a practical game of chess. White here, in fact, has only one way to draw. He's 3 pawns down, but he can draw with rook d7, which looks... I don't know, I'm not sure what to call it. It looks totally weird to put the rook right inside your pin that you just build up, but it's a good move. The idea is that white is just intends to take twice on c6, then take on a7, and then go with both rooks on the 7th and draw. That's really happening. If, for instance, queen e3, just to show it. This is a dead draw. Rook comes to d7, and those two rooks will guarantee you a perpetual. The toughest move seems to be not the rook, the queen check, but queen e5, after which only, funny enough, queen c1 seems to secure a draw. This also introduces this idea. And here black probably needs to switch back to this idea with a draw. Completely crazy. I mean, I really don't see real people finding that. Maybe I'm seeing it wrong, but rook d7 looks very tricky to me to find. If you look at other moves, just for example, this one, look at this.
Check. Check.
And black will win with rook f1.
Check. 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 Check.
Yeah. Funny, right? Okay. But the thing is, for a practical game, Karjakin had, it tells here 27 seconds. I think he even had less, but even if this is true, he would need to make 5 moves in 27 seconds, which is not, here we're talking about the real game where you need to move pieces and not with pre-moving on the internet. You can do that, but it's not so easy to play the moves out even, and you need to think a bit, at least a bit. So he went for queen e3 to get the queens off, which is totally understandable. G takes h, as mentioned, seems to be a draw as well, but it would have demanded some good moves by white. Queen e3, however, is relatively easy now to handle. Takes, and now bishop a4. Yeah, this knight is obviously hanging. Black needs to retreat it. And rook takes g5, getting a pawn back. Yeah, and now we have a position where black is 1 pawn up. But it seems that this should offer him very little winning chances. The problem is simply that the knight is a slightly clumsy piece in this situation that is not really helping in any sort of defensive way for the a-pawn. White has always this counterplay against the a-pawn. And in the next couple of moves, which was still played in time trouble, those moves, there was this trade happening and bishop c2. Yeah, and another point is that sometimes white can simply capture on a5 to get a very drawish endgame. And this is in fact what happened rather quickly. King to h6, rook retreated. And now Mamedyarov decided to simply take away the knight on f5. It does not look too logical. Just after I mentioned that the knight is a bit of a clumsy piece, but the thing is, after this, white is just far too active with the rooks. He set up this position now, where both rooks attack the a-pawn. Black must defend like that. And this is just completely drawn. No chance whatsoever. Of course, white is not allowing a rook trade. This might still be a draw, but it's just much easier this way. You always have this pressure, and black has absolutely no way to make progress. You can just stay with your rooks, move the king. There's no way forward. Not quite sure when they actually agree to a draw. Check. Yeah, here it's simply nothing. I mean, they certainly wanted to try, or here Karjakin with the extra pawn, but there's nothing to do. Yeah, a great fight, very tactical game. I actually in my notes I had a couple of more lines, but it would have probably confused the hell out of you. So I leave it at that. If you want to analyze a bit this game a bit more, then here the position after f6 with bishop f6 is really super complicated and interesting to check out. It would have been very critical, I believe, for Karjakin to survive in this time trouble that he was in, and it was a very complicated fight. Yeah, what does this mean for the tournament standing? Yeah, a draw, as mentioned at the start of the video, does not help both players much. They would have needed a win to seriously compete with Anand. Still, of course, Karjakin has in the next round the white game against Anand. With a win, there's always a theoretical possibility to do some things, but this is now, I mean, it was actually before a mandatory thing for him to do if he wants to qualify, but Mamedyarov is basically out of it as he has the worst tiebreak compared to Anand. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this fascinating game. Thanks for watching.